Hi, welcome to our video. Top tips if you're choosing childcare, things to think of. Uh, Quite often when I'm chatting to people, it's one of the things that come up when they find out what I do. Just the other day I was chatting to a mortgage advisor and she was sharing that she's pregnant, and we spent about 15 minutes chatting about what to look for and what questions to ask when you go on the tour, and what things are important to you as a first-time mum. So I thought, why don't we make a video and we'll put it out there as a reference point. So yeah, that's the reason behind the video, and we'll get started. We'll get jumping in straight with number one is, well, if you're watching this video, it's because you've decided that you do want to use childcare. And well, let's look at the differences. You have options, really. You have unregistered, which could be family, it could be neighbour down the road, somebody you know, and you have registered childcare. Now, the differences between the two is unregistered childcare, they're not insured. Unregistered childcare, you don't go through any vetting processes. You don't know who's in and out of their house. You don't know what they're doing during the day if they don't have their childcare qualifications, but they are usually cheaper. If it's family, that can work quite well, but sometimes then you feel a bit restricted in what you can ask them to do. So if it's a mum or a sister that's looking after them, but you would rather they didn't watch TV during the day, it can be harder to ask that because, you know, they're helping you out, they're doing you a favour. Whereas in paid or registered childcare, you can ask for things to be done exactly how you want. And if you go down the registered route, you have some options. So you can have a registered nanny, and you can still use your government support to finance a registered nanny, but you would be the employer, even if they're working for you on a freelance basis. But there are lots of agencies out there that can help with that process. That would mean you'd have someone in your home. You can also ask them to do light housework duties, but the priority is that they're there for the children. So they'd only be doing the light housework if it was to do with, okay, we'd tidy up the toys that the children used, usually, or if they have a big nap time, you might be able to get some clearing away done or folding of ironing or something like that. But their main priority is there to amuse and interact with the children and to create play opportunities for them. Your next option with registered childcare is a childminder. So a childminder will have they usually work alone. Sometimes they'll have their husband registered as a helper, or they'd have a younger member of the family, or a niece or a cousin or something registered as a helper, and that means they can take an extra couple of children. But usually if it's one childminder, you're looking at 6. Someone will correct me in the comments if that's not right. But yeah, and they are registered with social services. And if someone is going to be a childminder, social services come out to their home, they check everything to make sure it's safe. They'll have to have their child protection training, they'd have to have their first aid, and they'd have to have a childcare qualification. They'd have to have adequate insurance to be registered with social services, and they'd go through an inspection process once a year. And everyone that lives in that household would also be vetted with an Access NI vet. An Access NI vet is a police check that just checks that there isn't anything on record that would mean you shouldn't be working with children. And they also do a trust check. And part of that vetting process with social services means that you also fill out a health declaration form. So it's quite a good vetting system. And if you're going with a registered childminder, everyone in the household, or regular visitors, even if it's someone that stays over, would have to go through that process of vetting. If you choose daycare, now some people reference creches. Creches are actually registered with social services, but only if it's like a couple of hours. But if you're using a full daycare, that is a daycare registration. And it's registered with your Health and Social Services Trust, and it's, yeah, all of your staff obviously are vetted. At least 50% of the staff have to be trained, but everyone has to be on a training course. You can't have anyone who's there and who's unqualified and not signed up to do any training. So that's really important, I think, because that training is looking at children's developmental milestones. It's looking at how to deal with parents, how to handle complaints. It looks at the legislation. That training looks at health and safety. It looks at infection control. It looks at data protection. A lot of elements there that goes into even the very basic MVQs, and they'll have their child protection training and their first aid and food hygiene, which is very important. So you have a good level of training. A daycare nursery is inspected once a year by social services, and they have quite often monitoring visits during the year where the registered social worker will come out and just check that everything's going to plan, because they register you under the Children's Act, and that's the legislation that the minimum standards come from. So there's a minimum standard that they will expect to see in the centre, and then there's another book of guidance that helps you interpret that those standards, and every year they'll pick a different standard to inspect upon. So it's a really tight registration. So when we say registered childminders, that's what or registered daycares, or any form of registered childminder, whether it's a nanny, there is a process there that you can rely upon to have done a minimum level of checks. Unregistered childcare is one, illegal. You're actually not allowed to charge money to look after children if you're not registered. And you have none of that checkups done, and no minimum standards to rely upon. So that's your first big choice, is whether you're going to go registered or unregistered. We'll veer off down the line now of registered, because that's what I know and that's what I can talk to you about. Specifically daycares. So with daycares, I think what you want to really find out and talk about is the feel. Your gut instinct is your first thing. So what feeling do you get when you make contact on their social medias? When you make contact, do they have an email system? Can you get information to look through? Are you getting stuff that you can check at home? If you're doing research, have you got access to data there where you can say, okay, this is how much it is, this is their policies, here's what their curriculum's like? Have you got access to information that helps you make your choice? I think that's important when you're going to look around different daycares. And I would definitely recommend, if you're sitting thinking, what will I choose? Go to see as many as possible. Go to see childminders, go to see different daycares, because it's different vases for different flowers, okay? Each child will need something specific that will help them reach their full potential. And different daycares or different childminders will be able to meet different needs. So some children might absolutely flourish in a daycare setting where they have lots of peers to interact with, people to play with, energy to burn off, and they really thrive on that stimulation. Some children will do much better in a smaller group. So maybe a childminder that has similar age children, maybe a childminder who has children of a different age, so that child has a very individual level of attention. It might be quieter, it might be a more one-to-one relationship that those children benefit from. So you're going to know your child best, and you'll know what type of energy that they're going to sit better in. Daycares are for sure busy centres, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. When daycare is done well, it is a really, really beneficial environment for children to be in. It's so focused on brain development, so focused on physical development. You do so much on their emotional intelligence, their social skills. It just sets them up for initially for school life and then adult life when you're looking at those type of life skills that we try to feed in as part of our curriculum. So heading off to school, for instance, and then all of a sudden you're in a room of maybe 30 kids, and if that's the first time you ever have to work out about conflict resolution, that can feel like a big struggle in P1. Whereas if you have had some time in daycare settings, you've been handling conflict resolution from day one, when you've been there as a 6-month-old and that other 6-month-old wants the same toy as you, and it's what we would refer to as learning to share. Or really, if you expand that learning to share phrase on a much deeper level, what it is you're learning conflict resolution. And that's a massive part, because when you go to school, a lot of the success in school for the peers is how likeable children are, and how likeable children are relates to how social they are and how well they cope with conflict resolutions. So total life skill that I think daycare is great for. But again, it's different children. That is still a skill that they will learn at school. And if in their first few years that type of energy is overwhelming, then it suits better to be in a smaller group where they're learning conflict resolution in a childminder setting, and there's only 2 or 3 other children to connect to. What else did I want to tell you about that? So I think hold on, I might have to pause because I've gone off on a tangent about vases and flowers, because I love that. So I love that analogy so much. Okay, wait a second. I might have to circle back. But yes, I was saying about how you should go and visit, okay, and visit as many different things, oh my goodness, as many different types of childcare as you can, so that you can get a feel. But go by your instinct, and you're thinking about your child and your child's needs and what best helps your family. So some families will need part-time childcare, they'll need flexible childcare. I know Kiddiewinkles offer that. I don't know about other daycare nurseries or childminders, but that's definitely something you should ask if that's important for you guys, because it's one way of helping keeping the cost down. If you can, instead of paying for 5 days, if you only ever need 3, it's a great help to only have to pay for 3. Or if you only need 3 days for part of the month, and then you need 2 days a week for the rest of the month, that's a good saving as well if you have a flexible provider. So ask about that. Ask about flexible childcare. Ask about paying for the days you need. Ask about ad hoc days. So it's really great if you can get away with paying for 3 days, but know that you have the option of ringing for a 4th or a 5th should you need it. You're not guaranteed those days, but quite often you should be able to fit in and just get those if you needed it for an appointment or extra training at work or something like that. For many families, they do use like a part-time system. We have families that use the 5 days because we give families a bigger discount if they take 5 days, because it's easier for us to manage all of the numbers. But also you get a free week's childcare to use during the year if you take 5 days. And with the extra discounts that the government's given now, sometimes that is the best system to use. Is just book for the 5, take your free week when you want it, because the government's helping with, well, up to 35% now of the cost of childcare if you're on the tax-free childcare schemes. But for other people, it'll be more cost effective to use just 2 or 3 days, maybe family bring up the gaps there, or their partner where you work split shifts or something like that. And that can work for some families as well. It no doubt it is a massive outgoing from your family's monthly budget. But it's short term, because once they head to school, yes, there's less government help, but your childcare costs come right down. And you want to be looking for childcare providers that don't charge you the full day when they go to school. We have half day rate, but you're so if they go off to playgroup, or we wouldn't charge you the morning, but it has to be within that window. So for instance, if our half day is to 1 o'clock, and your nursery runs to 1 o'clock, brilliant. Then you don't have to pay for the morning session, you're only paying for the afternoon session. But if your nursery finishes at 11:30, then we couldn't hold the morning slot for that, and unfortunately you would have to pay a whole day. But the majority of our parents, especially now that the government is increasing the hours in nursery units and playgroups, it does mean that most of our parents are only having to pay for the afternoon session, which is halved. For some of our parents, it's half their childcare fees, which is really great. So yeah, that's important. And when you're going in with a baby, sometimes you don't think to ask that, but that's giving you a cash flow forecast for a few years of what you can expect your fees to be. So that's one of the things I would ask if you're going in as a mum of a baby, that you're actually asking about what the arrangements are for preschool. Do your fees go down any then when the children get older? Because then it's just a really short window where the money's tight. Well, it might not be tight, but when the bill is expensive for some people, then yeah, that's a shorter window, because when they go to school, it'll come down. The other thing to ask for there is what discounts they give, because we give a discount for 5 days, we give a discount for 4 days, there's a smaller discount for 3 days. Now that discount is reliant on bills being paid a month in advance, but if you can do a month in advance and you're happy to do that, there's a discount there that's really very useful for parents. So definitely ask about discounts on fees when you go to do your tours. What else do I think is really important when you're looking at childcare? If you're going around for tours, I would definitely ask about staff training. The staff are the biggest asset in a centre, because they're the people who are with the children all day long. The energy that they bring the children is really important, because that's the energy the children are going to learn in. We are practicing members of the Pickler approach, which is really based upon respectful relationships, because certainly for the under 3s, and it's a big thing for the under 2s, but relationships are their main focus of learning. Okay, so if they do not feel safe, all of the brain energy is going into, oh, where's my mummy, or what's happening over there? Did that door move? Am I safe? Okay, so all of the brain energy is being directed to, am I safe? If we build a relationship and it's a really strong and caring relationship, then all of the brain energy gets diverted to development, and all of the energy goes to building those neurological pathways, getting those synapses all clicking and popping up. And if you look at, like, there's some examples of brain scans that are done on children who are happy and content and have, lots of high oxytocin levels, and they put that down to having strong relationships and being secure in relationships, and the brain's just buzzing and clicking and binging, and it's working amazing. And then you look at the scans in that example. I think it was, if you want to look at the report, it's called Dance with Me in the Heart, I think, and it showed a scan of a child whose relationships might not be as strong. Maybe they're in a domestic violence home, or I'm not sure how they recorded what the circumstances were different, but certainly they could say that one brain had to move energy towards deciding if they were safe, and one brain didn't have to give energy to that at all. And the difference, even in the size and the function and the reactivity that was happening in there, was massive, a massive difference. So we really focus on relationships in those first few years, so that all of that energy can go to brain development, because it's so important in those first few years. That foundation, it's called foundation years for a reason. What you do in those foundation years is what everything else builds upon. You are setting them up for their reading, for their learning, for their aptitude for maths, for their aptitude for sports later in life. That's all happening in those foundations where those first blocks are going in. And yeah, those wee neurological pathways, they need constant stimulation, and they need it repeated in the right pattern, and they need it done in the right sequence so that you can maximise that opportunity in the first few years. And that's why I'm such a believer that if childcare is done well, it's a benefit, and parents should not feel guilty about using it, because it will actually benefit your children's development, having access till some time in that facility. Doesn't have to be full time. It can even be a morning or two, or a day or two a week. But having that sensory feedback is what stimulates those neurological pathways, and that's what builds on your brain development. And also, if you add in movement and outdoors, you're times it by 10. And our curriculum is really focused on outdoor play, and it's really focused on burning off that cortisol that seems to be feeding through into kids because of just how we live nowadays. With we're busier, that creates an anxiety. Computer screens, there's TV screens, all of that's around us, and it creates a chemical in our body that you burn off through movement. And if you can do that movement outdoors, it's even better, because it's going to increase their appetite for healthy foods. It's going to make them sleep better. It improves their immune system. It actually switches on a different part of the brain, so that if they were doing like a cognitive activity indoors, to do that outdoors, it's different. It just connects a different part of the brain. And anyway, it's so interesting. The reason for that rant was, ask about the curriculum, ask about what they're excited about, ask the providers, when you go and do your tours, ask them why they do it that way. What is the approach that they follow? What's the curriculum? What's exciting to them that's going to benefit the children? And then ask how they support their staff in delivering that, because they could have the most amazing policy, but if their staff are not supported, the children aren't benefiting from it. And it's a big focus that we have with our work teams, is happy staff mean happy kids. We don't like that type of environment where you can hear Pixie growling, please, it's okay. There's workman out the front and she's chatting away here, telling me our life's in danger. It's okay. So yeah, big believer in happy staff or happy kids. And you should feel that when you're in the premises, when you go and do your tours, you should feel that your staff or the staff there are warm, welcoming, that you feel that they have ownership of the room that they're in. Look out for examples of activities on the wall. Now, Pixie. For me personally, that's not always artwork. I like to see pictures of the kids doing the activity, because then the focus is on the learning that happened during that activity and not on the end product. So yeah, look for lots of evidence of what it was like for the child actually doing the activity, because that's where the learning would have taken place. And ask them about that. Ask your provider about that, how they are going to support your child's learning in those early years, or the times that they're with them, even if it's in after schools. That's important, and they should be really happy to talk about those things with you. They should be able to go off on a tangent. You'll know if that's something that is exciting to them, and I think if you're paying a big amount for registered childcare, then you should get your money's worth, and that means that your children should really benefit from an excellent curriculum, really strong relationships, and yeah, because then it's money well spent. So that's something I'd definitely look for. Next tip is ask about the meals. You want as little processed food on there as possible. I feel that as a working mum, if I need to rely on fish fingers for tea some night, or worst case scenario, cereal and toast because we're running out to meetings or we have something to get to, I don't want to have any extra mum guilt. And I have never had that with my own growing up, because I've always known that I've had a really good dinner in a Kitty Winkles. And that's like your meat, your veg, your proteins, very low sugar, very low processed foods, because processed foods quite often contain just chemicals. I know we call it food, but they're just chemicals that the body doesn't actually know how to digest. So you want to have the minimal amount of processed food on the menu. Look at if they're able to do choices. Look at if they're able to do allergies. Yeah, so I think that's a big one to look for. Also, I'm going to say meal times because I'm really super proud of how we do meal times. But it's a massive learning opportunity that we didn't always make the most of. So, for instance, we used to use just high chairs in the daycare nursery. And then when we became a pickler practice, we moved away from that, because when we're feeding babies, we keep them really close. It helps build that relationship. And so we're feeding them on our knee or on a one-to-one basis in a little captain's chair. Because what I found with high chairs is they were, we would have had them lined up almost, and your go-to response then is to feed them in a little line. And what I didn't like about that is then that you have one staff member maybe feeding 2 or 3 kids, and they're not getting enough attention. And it is an opportunity for learning, for you to have them close together, for you to be building vocabulary, for you to be building your relationship, for them to feel really, really close, really settled. You're filling up their emotional cup. It means that they're going to go off to sleep better, they're going to digest their food better, they're going to be able to play independently for a little while because they've had your undivided attention here. I found that children struggled with the independent play if they didn't have enough one-to-one time. And the other thing about high chairs is, and I have found this from having them at home, they are really, really, really hard to keep clean. If you get Weetabix on those, if you get the Weetabix down there in the harnesses, it is so tough. And so a staff member spending a lot of time having to clean those. And that is time that their staff member could have with the kids. And it comes back to that feeling that I have, that your staff are their biggest asset. And so they should be with the kids, building relationships, singing songs, building their vocabulary, creating learning opportunities, invitations to play. Anything that takes them away from direct time with the kids, I think is time ill prepared. Let me put it like that. It's another reason why we don't do a lot of painting on windows, because although it looks fabulous and it's really creative, a staff member will have had to come and do that and spend maybe 2 or 3 hours on that. And that's 2 or 3 hours that they could be with children. So ask about their meal times. Is it used as a learning opportunity? Because even in our rooms, like our preschool room, we would have fed 16 children at all at one time, and it's not it's not a pleasant experience for the staff, and it's not a pleasant experience for the children. I don't know if you can think back to any birthday parties you've been to. It's loud, it's overstimulating, it's get them fed, get everybody cleaned up, move it on. It's a care routine that happens to the children rather than a care routine that the children are engaged with. So the reason we really changed that is, one, it was a pickler practice, but also I used to think back to when I worked in a primary school, and lunch times were heavily policed because of the noise levels, and everybody just dreaded the lunchtime, and it didn't have a great energy around it. And so when we saw how Pickler approached us meal times, it was really, really nice. So how that works with us is we are setting out the table. The children come to the table. The food, so another thing we used to do was like mix all the food up, but the children couldn't tell what they were eating then. And also it doesn't help with the development of your tongue muscles. You want some lumps in there, you want something to chew so that you develop that muscle, which is going to help with your speech. So now the children can see the food going on the plate, they can choose what goes on the plate. It's just a massive part of creating this healthy relationship with food, that we give children that autonomy. We say to them, look, we trust you to make this decision around food, and we take all the pressure off. And our kids eat really, really well, and they eat really great meals. And we have parents saying to us all the time, oh my goodness, they don't eat that at home, they don't eat that at home. But in our setting, they come and eat maybe 4 or 6 children at a table, just on their own that time. And the rest of the children are playing. And those 6 children have 1 member of staff. Now with the younger children, it's 1-on-1, and then it goes a group of 1 to 3, then 1 to 4, and then 1 to 5, 1 to 6, while they're learning those independent skills. And they can pour themselves the water, they can decide what they put on their plate, they cut it up, they mix it up themselves, they feed themselves. And what we're building there is a conversation at the table. So it's another opportunity for building vocabulary. You know, a child's vocabulary range at 3 is an indicator of what their reading level is going to be like at 11. So you want to be giving them as many examples, different words for things as possible. And we can do that if we use the mealtime as a learning opportunity. It's a great time to practice patience, to practice polite table manners, of how to engage in conversation at the table. And they do it, and there's no tablets and there's no phones, and it's really lovely. Now, what does that look like from an outside person coming in? Sometimes with the toddlers, there'll be a group of 3 toddlers who are having their dinner, and the rest of the staff and the rest of the kids are carrying on their play. But you might have some kids wandering up going, oh, you know, why am I not eating? Or I would like to eat now. But that usually only happens for the first day or 2 while they're getting used to the routine. And I still think it's better working with that than going back to everybody eating at the one time and it just being a conveyor belt of getting the food into them. I don't know. I like it. I think it's a really nice time where they connect together. It's another opportunity to build a relationship. And like, what do we do with people we love and care about? We love going out and having a meal together. And this is what we're setting with the meal times. It's a lovely positive energy around it. Because it's a pickler approach and it's built on this respect for the children, whenever they are finished, they're finished. We will never try to put in an extra spoonful. We will never try and squeeze anything in. We will never say one more or eat it up. We completely respect that they know when their body is full, and then we leave it at that. Now, if they didn't gauge it right and they're hungry again in an hour's time, they have access to fruit and vegetable sticks all day long. So they'll never be hungry. But what we're teaching them is that they have autonomy over their body. They don't have to eat to please us. They don't have to eat to gain favour from us. They don't have to make themselves uncomfortably full in order to people please for us. It's just a really healthy attitude towards food that we're building through these meal times. And so, yeah, ask about meal times. Ask about what that looks like. Ask about sleep times. Um, there's a lady I know, and she owns a daycare in Belfast, and part of the year they sleep outside in little cots, and I just think it's amazing. And I would love social services to give me the clearance to open that up, because sleeping outdoors is just so good for their immune system. They sleep at a much deeper level. Again, there's something that switches on a different part of the brain when you're doing it outdoors. So that's something to look out for, that we're going to try and work into our new centre in Dungannon on Killyman Road, is some access to outdoor sleeping. It's just so great for them. But yes, look at the sleep routine. Again, is there a good relationship with sleep? Is it a gentle experience? Is it something that the staff are supporting the children with? And does it set good, healthy sleep routines for you to use at home? So, for instance, we have our policy that the children sleep in cots. If they can climb out of the cots, they sleep on the little beds, or the little bed mats that's on the floor. That's because there's so many of them sleeping all at one time. The little bed mats, which are sometimes like mattresses and sometimes they're on little feet, but those are really great for independent bedtimes. So like they'll grab the little blanket, swing it over the shoulder, sometimes dodo in the mouth, and they climb into bed, and there's no fighting, there's no arguing. And when you see that done en masse of 12 little toddlers all toddling off and getting into their beds, it's just amazing. When you think of how sometimes you're chasing them around the landing to get them into bed at home. So really, really nice bed routine. Sleep routines are important, I think. You don't want anybody being forced to sleep. You don't want them sleeping in positions or in prams and things unless there's a medical condition. Now, if they're used to doing that at home, we will have a transition period where, yes, they'll do that for the first couple of days while they're building a relationship with us, but then we will be actively moving them into our routine. If that's not something that would suit your family, definitely looking at nannies and childminders where they might be able to be more flexible for longer. But with daycare, it works if everyone's in the similar routine. Once you get out of the initial baby stage, the infant stage, certainly by 18 months, everyone would be sleeping at the same time, eating at the same time. And in order to do that, there has to be a transition period from how you would have maybe done it at home to how we do it at creche. But we take that at the kids' pace and we follow their cues and when they're ready. But we'd always be actively looking for that move. It wouldn't be that once they would start maybe sleeping in a pram, don't expect that to go on long term. But you know, there's not always a medical reason for that to be necessary. Sometimes it's just convenience or something that works at home. And when they are in a different environment, a different routine works really, really well. And it can be a great opportunity to change some of those things that you would like to change by doing it at that junction. So that can be useful. Another tip is look at their inspection reports. You can go online to the Social Services Trust and look at those. Social Services will comment on the standard that they're inspecting upon, but they will also comment on the feel of the centre, how the staff interact with the children, how well they feel the centre is managed, and you know, why not use their expert opinion to be able to guide you there. I think that's quite useful. And just get in and just talk to as many as you can, so that you can find the one that fits for you. And when you're doing that, I wanted to talk to you ask about the outside areas. Again, that's because I am Fanatical's not the right word. What am I? Um, I'm so impressed with the benefits that are listed for outdoor play when it comes to children's development. It's the figures they just impress me, and I just think, well, look, if everything we're doing can be times 10 by doing it outdoors, it's crazy. Why are we not outdoors? And in this country, we think a bit of rain or a bit of cold, but you know what? You get the appropriate clothes on, get their wetsuits, get their wellies, get them outdoors. It's just so good. It's so good for their emotional regulation. It's so good for their immune system. It's so good for their sleep. It's so good for their appetite. It's so good for their social skills. It is so good for burning cortisol. You have kids who could be quite spicy when they're in the classroom, but you put them in the same situation outside and they become the leaders. They become the group leaders. Their energy just shifts from being spicy to being supportive, just like that, just from the shift from indoors to outdoors. So look at their outdoor provision, especially with regards to whole body movements. What you want is your outdoor classroom to meet different needs than your indoor classroom needs. So if the outdoor area is just trikes or just space where they run about, I don't know that will meet all of the needs and all of the potential that it could do for an outdoor space. So you definitely want to look at opportunities for whole body movement and doing activities outdoor. But don't get me wrong, the most important thing is the policy. If it is in their policy to go outdoors every day, that's still good, because again, your staff are the biggest asset and the staff will make the space work. But if their policy is we go out when we can, then they're not even out there to get the benefit from it. So yes, look at the outdoor space, but more importantly, look at how often they're outdoors in that space. Because sometimes you're just restricted with what you have. And I know with our centres, it's there's different levels of our outdoor space. So for instance, our Dungannon Centre, I mean, it has outdoor classrooms, it has polytunnel, it has a forest area, but we own that building and it's so much easier for us to do the things that we want to do. In some of our other settings, we are restricted by the space that our landlords have given us. So yeah, it is important, but look at what you can do with the space. Look at how often they're outside. Look at the activities they're doing when they are outside. And but being outside is just, it's one of the things I would look for on my tip. What else would I say for top tip? Yeah, look for that level of professionalism. That might not be that important to you when you're signing up, but it'll be really important if you ever need help with something that that you're concerned about, or if you're ever involved with outside agencies. That level of professionalism will be really important then. So look for that. And that'll be in their communication, that'll be in their their written documents. And yeah, I think that's important, and that's something to look for. Okay, we're quite a while in. If you're still here at this point, you're really super dedicated. It's moved more from my top tips to childcare to what I think good childcare looks like for me. But I'm just sharing that information so then you can put together what great childcare looks like for you and your family. It might not be the same, and that's totally okay, because every family is different, every child is different, and yeah, not everyone can have their needs met in the exact same setting. So that's important to think about. Yeah, so Also, time. This is something people ask as well. When should I go looking for childcare? The earlier, the better. So we've had parents who really wanted to come to us, but had to go with their second choice because we didn't have spaces available, and they would have had to wait a few months. We've had some parents who have went to their second choice, and as soon as the spaces come up, have moved back to us. And then we've had some parents that know that they don't want to put their children through the move, so they stay with the second choice, but maybe make the move when there's another child has been born and it's a baby coming back in again. We've had lots of people register interest when they've been pregnant. We've had lots of people register 6 months in advance for a place. Particularly if it's twins, the earlier the better for twins or triplets, because then you need the same days, the same times, but times 2 in a room. And if you're going into a setting, like just as an example, some baby rooms are only registered for 9. The maximum they can be registered for is 12, and those children might be in that room for like 9-10 months. So the spaces don't come up very often, and there aren't a lot of spaces to start with. And so if you're ringing up and you need 5 full days for twins, you can imagine that's going to be harder to get hold of. So the earlier the better. You can put an expression of interest with us, and we'll let you know if something comes up or if somebody's looking to book the space. We'll keep you in mind for that, but you don't own the space until you pay your registration fee. And some people pay a token retainer fee just to get them on our software app so that they get that information through every month. Some people do expression of interest and wait closer to the time to pay the registration fee. It's a bit riskier, but it usually works out. It usually does. But yes, I would say the earlier the better, especially if you're on maternity. You want to be able to really, really enjoy your maternity, and those times at home without the dread of having to do that hanging over you, because sometimes we can be dreading it, and then when you go and find your childcare, you're like, oh, that's a weight off my mind, that's great. And you think, why did I waste months and months worrying about that when it was actually quite a positive experience? And the great thing about it is, if you are registered and you have picked your childcare, you can do like keeping in touch days, like we call them tester periods. You get 3 free hours to be with us before you would even register, to decide if we're for you. And like you're set like a 3-hour settling in. And you could use that during your maternity, or you could even book in ad hoc days. So say you had an appointment, or you wanted to go somewhere with your mum, or you wanted to have a day away, and you can get childminders from the evening but not all day, or you just have a hair appointment, or you want to go to the gym, or whatever, but you want some time to yourself while you're on maternity. If you're registered and you have your childcare place booked for going back to work, you can use it as an ad hoc day. You can ring up and say, oh, could I have next Thursday morning? And it just gives you some more options. Also, with us, that's what the builder men are doing today, actually, and it's another top tip. look and ask for things that they do to connect you while you're waiting, especially if you're a first-time mum, because maternity can be quite lonely then. So one of the things that we're doing is sometimes we do play dates where you can come in and we'll do like sensory play all together, and you can do that in the room that your child would be in, so that you're getting to know the staff and you're getting to see all the kids that are going to be in the room, and you can see the type of activities that we do. But also the workmen are here today because they're just finishing, or in the final stages of our swimming pool, which is here at my home, but the centres are going to be able to use it as a trip. And so we're going to have we're going to open it up to parents that's on our waiting list, who are on maternity, who are waiting to start, that we do little parent and baby water sessions in the pool. It's a way of getting to know the staff and the other parents as well. So yeah, that's another tip. Ask what other options are out there for that time when you're building up and ready to go. Because again, everything that we do, it comes back to how it helps the children. And if you have a relationship of trust with your childcare provider, the children pick up on that. It's just easier for them to come to us if they feel that your energy is good. So it's when they walk into the room, they'll look at us and then they'll look at you to read your reaction to us when they're handing them over, or when you're in the room. And if you smile, they're like, oh, okay, she likes them. That's okay. I might like them. But if they pick up an energy where you're not sure, or you don't know if you trust the provider that you've chosen, they pick up on that, and it's harder for them. And then that goes back to what we were saying at the start. If they don't feel safe, there's brain energy being diverted away from brain development. So it's really important for us that we build a relationship with you guys, and ask about that. Well, do you know what? When you go and visit, you get a feel if relationships are important. But they certainly are to us, because it benefits the children. And I think that's what I would look for. I've always used my children as an inspiration for how we run the nursery, and I would want every child in our Kitty Winkles to be cared for how I would want my own to be cared for. And my eldest is now 20, and so I think if I was taking her to visit daycare nurseries with a baby, she doesn't have one yet, but somewhere in the future maybe, who knows. I'd really want to see evidence that the child was at the centre of everything they do. And I think for me that's important, because you can get caught up in office politics, you can get caught up in legislation, you can get caught up in financial stability, you can get caught up in all of these spokes on the wheel. And sometimes then the children get lost in that, and you end up doing things that don't benefit the children. And so I'd want to see evidence that every decision, every conversation starts with, well, what's actually best for the children? And that even comes down to, can I go on my lunch break? Okay, have all the children had their meals first? That little one who's just started has really took to you, and she is due her sleep. So if you could get her to sleep first, then you can go for your lunch break. That's the type of, it's so hard to find evidence for that, but all conversations, all decisions come right back to what is best for the child. The child is at the absolute centre, and then everything else moves off from that. And that can be hard to see when you're looking at staff, or you're looking at financial discussions. But again, if a company is not financially sustainable, then the staff are not looked after, and then the children are not well cared for. So that financial stability in a business is still holding the child at the centre, because you can do a good job if you're not worrying about whether your doors are going to be open next month or not. So anyway, that's my opinion on that. And yeah, if it came down to it, and I was taking my own daughter to visit a daycare centre, because I think that's the option I would recommend if it was my own blood. The biggest thing would be the children are at the centre, that there's a really good energy, that staff are happy, because they're the people who are going to be around the kids the most. I'd look for being outdoors. I'd look for a passion around the curriculum. and I would look for flexibility, because that's the biggest thing for a parent. You're juggling so many other things. To have somebody that's on your team that's flexible, that you can ring up and say, oh my goodness, wee Johnny is going to art class next week. I forgot to tell you, he'll need picked up at 4 instead of 3. And for your provider, say, no problem. Oh, it's a wait. Yeah, it's until you're in that situation, you won't know how amazing that is. But for them to just go, don't worry about it, I've got it, no problem. So yeah, those are the things that I would look for if I was in that if I was in your situation. But I'm not saying that we're perfect. I'm not saying that we're right for everybody. I'm trying to do this in a really open way, if that makes sense, that this would benefit you even if you're not thinking of kitty winkles. So if you take all of those and you bring it to, whether it's a childminder, whether it's your mother-in-law, whether it's your best friend, whether it's a childminder or a daycare or a mixture of all, if you took those points and those tips and those little things to look for, I think you would still really benefit from it. So yeah, that's on our video on just a conversation about starting childcare. And I wish you the best of luck with it. I hope you find solutions that work for you and your family, and that you are confident and happy when you're in work. All right, thanks, and I'll see you again next time.